I'm looking good.
This is The Thing About Cars, a podcast for car enthusiasts and the people who love them.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Thing About Cars. I'm Mickey Desai. Around the table we have the usual crew, minus Ben, which is kind of strange not having him here. But Dave, how are you?
I am so giddy about today's guest, I can't hardly see straight.
Me too. This is a much anticipated conversation.
This is an exciting show.
Yes. Misty, how goes it?
Warm.
Warm?
Very warm, very...
Moist?
Oh my God. Yeah, it's moist. It's moist, man.
We do not use the M word in the podcast.
Well, if you're not going to say my name, then why am I here?
Don, how are you?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Very well, thank you.
Good, excellent. And our special guest for today, a gentleman named Scott Hardie. Scott, how goes it?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yes, today we're going to talk about Scott's film. He's done a documentary on the flying car indirectly, but not quite the flying car. You've done a documentary on Dr. Paul Moller, the father of the flying car. Did I get that right, Scott?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a feature
Excellent.
documentary. Yep.
Cool. We'll jump into that in a minute. But first, of course, our grand trivia auto question of the day. We always ask a trivia question at the top of the show and hopefully answer it correctly at the end of the show. The trivia question for today is, what was the last vehicle offered with a column-mounted 3-speed manual transmission, otherwise known as 3 on the tree? Misty's like, I know this. So what was the last vehicle offered with 3 on the tree? Was it a Ford Econoline van? Was it a Dodge diesel Ram pickup? Was it a Chevrolet pickup? Or was it a GMC van? So basically a Ford van, a Dodge pickup, a Chevy pickup, or a GMC van. One of those 4 was the last vehicle offered with the column-mounted 3-speed manual transmission. Scott, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How
Fantastic. I'm good. What part of the country are you in?
I am in Los Angeles, California. You're on
Oh.
the West Coast.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. So how did you, are you a filmmaker by trade?
Yes. Yeah. Started filmmaking when I was in my early 20s. Been doing it ever since. And
Okay. So just documentaries or works of fiction as well?
yeah, both fiction and nonfiction. I went to graduate school at USC. And there it was a collection of films that we were creating, both fiction and nonfiction. And
my last question for you before we open it up to the table is, how did you settle on this particular topic for this film? The flying car, Dr. Moller, how did you land on that?
I would go back to when I was like 7 years old, when we were all watching movies like Blade Runner and Star Wars and getting inspired as a kid. I think flying cars were amazing, back then. And around that same time, my dad handed me a local newspaper, right? And on the cover of that newspaper was the Sky Car, Paul Moller's Sky Car. And I thought, oh my God, these things that I saw in the movies are real, So as a little kid, I was really inspired, and that had stuck with me for quite some time. So when I was at graduate school at USC, I was in a documentary class, and they said, come to class with an idea. And for whatever the reason, that memory came back to me. And I sent Paul an email, and little did I know that would start a 12-year journey making this film.
Wow. 12 years.
Yeah.
That's cool. I have many questions I want to ask you, but obviously I want to make sure the others get to chime in. What do you guys got?
Well, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Yes, Scott. One of the reasons I'm legitimately so excited. First of all, I saw your documentary. I think it's fantastic. My background is aerospace engineering, and this is one of the things that it spoke to me. First of all, it's a well-made movie. Second, you really handled some things very, very intuitively, and I'm perhaps asking a bit of a loaded question, but what's your relationship like with Dr. Moller, and how do you find him as a person?
Well, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I think my relationship with Paul, kind of evolved. If you spend a decade with someone, you're going to form a relationship of sorts. And for me, it became kind of, I go into a lot of subject as an outsider, right? So I knew very little about flying cars. My dad is an engineer, so I knew how engineers thought. And what I found was, getting to know Paul was like getting to know my dad better. The way engineers think, the way they approach, problems and problem solving, and it was really cool to be able to relate what I'm hearing from Paul to what I've been hearing from my dad my whole life. And working with Paul, he's an optimist. And I think when you're trying to build something that many people think are impossible, being an optimist is key. He wakes up every day looking forward to, getting to work. And how lucky, any of us could be to have a job like that. During production, I would say, Paul's in his 80s now.
Mm-hmm.
So when I met him, he was in his mid 70s, and during production, both my grandmothers had passed away, and they were like pillars in my life. Always, the elderly person giving you so much wisdom as you grow up. So inherently, Paul became kind of this pseudo figure also that kind of fulfilled this mentor role of entrepreneurship and futurism and stuff like that too. So I respect the heck out of the guy. I think he's still working. Like if you were to call Moller International today, I guarantee you he'd be in the garage working on the engines or working on the flight system or trying to figure out the automation. Like he is so committed. And to me, that's what makes the film really inspiring. So
I like what you. Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, please, no. Go ahead.
I like what you said about waking up being an optimist. That I think I imagine it would be kind of hard to be an inventor without optimism. They can't imagine waking up every day saying, "Oh, I'm going to invent this," and God, it's going to fail, right? So,
one of the things that I tell people, and the optimism really, I think, comes through in the movie, because the profession, especially aerospace engineering, is somewhat full of a lot of crab asses. And there is a traumatic point when you're going through undergrad where all of a sudden you discover, by and large, one person can't design or build an aircraft. They're just way too complex. And now so you come face to face with the fact that, oh, my career is I'm going to be a landing gear guy, or I'm going to be a controls guy, or I'm going to be, God forbid, the lavatory guy. So Dr. Muller's kind of living a dream for a lot of engineers, and we're just like, he's in the middle of all of it, trying to create a single vision as opposed to just I'm left front landing gear guy.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what's really special about his environment is, yes, he has been seen as this kind of lone wolf in the industry that's been plugging away since he was in his mid 30s. But he's also attracted a dedicated crew, and they're small and strong and smart, who have been dedicated to him and the Sky Car for 20 plus years. I mean, in the film, Zach Rabin, he joined the company probably 2 or 3 years as I got in, and you could see his dedication. He's this young, doe-eyed engineer when he started, but then, wow, how dedicated he was towards the end. He was willing to sacrifice a lot. And I think that's what a lot of people take for granted when they think of engineers is they don't understand the sacrifice that is taken by them in a personal level. It's so much time they're spending in the garage, and what sacrifice that means for family and career as well. So
Yeah. I want to jump in there, Scott. My father-in-law is an engineer and flew for the Air Force when he first got out of Virginia Tech, and invented many things for the Air Force, including, I think, an altimeter he still has a patent on today. And I've watched him. He's also in his late 80s, just tinker and tinker, and it's quite astonishing. Like the evolution of anything that we do is someone's brainchild, but it's never like, you very seldom get it right the first time. You have to keep that iteration and iteration and iteration, and watching him do things and invent has been amazing. And looking at Moller's stuff, I'm thinking, wow, someone did have to start somewhere, and thank goodness he was one of them. It's a really cool process, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, and to kind of go with what you're saying, Don, is I started this process because I looked back at history, and I was kind of bummed out and a little disappointed that technology wasn't capable enough to document the process of the Wright brothers. Like, we saw their flight, but we never got to see like the dark days, the mini victories in the garage, and like the big disappointments when things didn't go right. Like, we saw the end result, but we never saw the process. So that, with Father of the Flying Car, that's what I wanted to show, was that behind the scenes look at an engineer's, grind in invention. So
that's very cool. Yeah, it would have been cool to see the Wright brothers just do trial and error on all their stuff. Because
absolutely.
The little known fact, just my claim on this, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, where the worship of Wright brothers qualifies as an actual religion. and my dad was also an aerospace engineer we were stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He actually got to work with Orville Wright.
What?
God.
Yeah, there were actually days that Dad was towards the end of Orville's life. Dad was a brand new engineer working in wind tunnels in Dayton, and Mr. Wright would come up and they'd go sit outside on the curb in the parking lot and share bologna sandwiches and talk.
Wow.
That is just way too cool.
That's a great story, because my father-in-law played cards with the first astronauts. Like, them and their wives got together. They were out at Edwards Air Force Base in California, and they just sat around, played cards, and George did the engineering stuff, and they did the going to the moon stuff.
What I do is I go out into my car and I pretend I'm flying a spaceship.
Well, the vision has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the lack of photon torpedoes always ruins that.
It's very true. It's such a disappointment.
That's a constant disappointment. But going back to something Don said about the constant tinkering, I think that's just endemic for anyone with cars, because my grandfather was an auto mechanic, and he was stationed on Tinian Island in World War II, where they deployed the Enola Gay. And one thing that my grandfather has passed down to me is a deep-seated hatred for laundry. And he got really tired of washing his uniforms by hand, so he actually took Japanese airplane parts they had scavenged and created a washing machine. And, I firmly believe that if my grandfather had been born in a different place, because my grandfather was born in the place where they filmed the movie Deliverance. I was born there too. Please don't judge me on that. There's reasons I have a European husband. Trying to deepen the gene pool, man. Yeah. But I think if he had been born
broaden, not deepen, broaden.
Yeah, it's something. My family tree is no longer a wreath. It's all me. Yes, I'm awesome. 6,000 kilometers to find some new genetic material. It's what I did. Thanks.
That's hilarious.
But I think if he had been born in a different place, he would have also been an engineer. He was just, he never bought a lawnmower brand new. He'd go to the junkyard and spend $5, and then that thing would do, all it needed was Kimi Räikkönen, and it was off to the races. And, I got that from him as well. I remember I was probably the only 17-year-old girl in North Georgia in the 1990s that could do a full oil change and a tune-up on a 1978 Toyota Corolla.
That is hot. You have no idea.
Although I did have to brace my knees on the bumper to tighten the oil pan plug because I'm like 5'1".
Yes.
I'm like this big. So I was like, get my knees up under there. You know.
Well, back to Scott real quick. So you've done the documentary. You've spent time with Dr. Moller. I have two questions for you. One, did anything in the research process or did anything in the development process surprise you?
In the development process of the film or of his work?
Both. But
Yeah.
mostly your own discovery is what I'm worried. What I'm trying to get at here. Did you learn anything that really surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, I think documentaries teach each filmmaker what they're capable of. And I'd say, you know, I went to one of the best film schools in the world, right? They're teaching you how to work with schools. They're teaching you how to work with students. They're teaching you how to work with equipment, the best of the best. And you're surrounded by amazing colleagues that are great at their craft too. But when circumstances, you know, become what they become, sometimes you have to rely on yourself and what you've learned and put it to test. And that's what this film became. I started the film and I was lucky enough to have a crew for about a year. And the film benefited greatly because of their involvement. But eventually the film goes on for another 11 years. It's hard to sustain a crew. So financially and whatnot. So
does it ever become just you and a camera?
It's me and a camera for 11 years of the movie.
Yeah.
And you know, I live in Los Angeles. I'm from Sacramento, so it was convenient that I was about 30 minutes away from Paul when I was up in Sacramento, but I would make that drive twice a month for at least 9 of those years, and film with Paul. So at the end of the thing, I can step away and feel like, yeah, this film has kind of raised me as a filmmaker. Like I'm ready to F and go on the next movie. You know, you put me on a set of a doc or a fiction film, you know, there's no looking back. So as far as Paul goes, you know, the development of the Sky Car and the New Era, which is his flying saucer vehicle, which, by the way, his flying saucer, there are rumors that it inspired the design of the Jetsons flying saucer.
I would not be surprised.
Versa.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. The second question I had for you is, given the conversations you've had, do you think we will ever actually have a mass production of a flying car?
Well,
or mass adoption of a flying car, let's say that.
Sure. I would say there are now, and to go back to Misty, you know, talking about people ahead of their time, Paul Moller, in many accounts, was ahead of his time, right? He's still going, and Moller International is still a well-oiled machine, still working. But Paul was making drones in the 1980s, you know?
Wow.
So this time frame, people since the 1960s have said flying cars are, you know, 15 to 20 years away.
Yeah.
Well, now we actually have companies like Joby Aviation to go along with, you know, Moller International. There's PAL-V, there's Terrafugia. There's a lot of these companies that are actually committing a lot of money to it. But it comes down to FAA approval, government approval, whether or not we can install these vertiports, because it has to be vertical takeoff and landing. Runway-based flying cars is probably not the way it's going to go. And Joby Aviation has partnered with Uber with their Elevate program, which is looking to develop a system of inner-city travel for flying cars. So, you know, they've been saying 15 to 20 years since the 1960s, so I'll say 15 to 20 years.
Well, yeah, and you make a good point because I'm on a zoning board here in my community, and all communities are getting small. I mean, like houses right next to each other, and townhouses and condos, and nobody's building, these 2-3 acre communities with a landing strip in the middle of 30-40 houses. They're so that everybody has a big place to stick their airplane. We have two or three of those in the county, but
yeah, I've seen a handful of them.
But that's not the future. The future is small. Is I think even the future is people having small abodes in multiple places. I think it's not going to be a 5,000, 4,000 square foot house. I think it's going to be 1,000 maybe square feet, and you have a locker where you stick your stuff and jet off to wherever else you want to be. And recently, being in Abu Dhabi earlier this year, I mean, the modernness of Asia is stunning. What they're doing in Singapore, what they're building out in all of the Asian countries is going to really support this kind of transportation.
I mean, there are major questions related to infrastructure and planning and zoning and all that. Like you said, I've seen airport communities, like everybody who lives there is a pilot. Your garage is not a garage, it's a hangar. And you literally roll your plane out and fly out to work in the morning. And
I tried landing on one of those once.
Yeah.
It was tough.
They do exist, but I don't know if the world will adopt that on a larger scale. Plus, you can't reshape all the existing communities to have that. So
I also think no, go ahead, Misty.
I was going to say, I mean, I just don't think it's possible, when we go to the aerial transportation as the norm, the minivans aren't going to be possible. You're going to be in a smart tube.
That's right.
I mean, I hate to say it. And, and that would be a lot easier to land on the roof, like a mini helipad, than to try to do any kind of, and that way every community can have one of those elevator garages. I want one of those so bad.
I like this.
Yeah, I think whenever you talk about flying cars, like the number one thing that people bring up is like, oh my God, cars are going to be falling from the sky and we're all going to be in danger. And, this future is going to put us, on the brink. And it's like, no. The one thing you have to understand is like automation is what's going to keep us all safe.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt, but that is what I've been saying for years, that if because you see how badly people drive on the ground.
Paris.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Paris.
Let's make this introduction formal. Scott, this is our good buddy Ben.
Hi there,
Scott. Yes.
Hi, Ben.
Ben was able to join in a little bit late, so we're running out of time really quickly. Ben, do you have any questions for Scott, real quick, before we wrap the segment?
Not really. I have no idea what I've missed in the discussion, and
we got into
I just got done watching a movie right before I got online.
We learned that Misty gets very familiar with her cars when she works on them.
Scott, I have one last question for you. When I did some research, he was at UC Davis, like adjacent to them, so that made it kind of a nice sort of the community supported what was going on. Where do you see the competition for this going in the future in terms of this company and other companies? Like, is this an area, and maybe even Dave has some insight, that is just going to take off, or is there limited space for this kind of evolution?
I mean, like I said, I think it's going to depend on government, but I also think it's going to depend on private investment from anything from angel investors, honestly, to corporations. But I think the Uber Joby Aviation partnership is really positive for the industry. But I also worry that some of these companies are going to have to go outside of the country to make this a reality, and there's a little less bureaucracy in some of those countries, and there's some future thinking that's going on outside, and I've heard that firsthand. So
the infrastructure,
there will be competition. And
I agree with you. I think for something that is this progressive, I'll equate it to the pharmaceutical industry. The reason that pharmaceutical industries have laboratories and production facilities offshored is that frequently they can get to market faster and get development faster in some deregulated places, or places where there's less commercial pressure. Because if you think about it, it's the same thing. Electric cars took a long time to get to become viable because oil manufacturers did not want them to become viable.
Mhm.
There's a lot of industry that doesn't, including my former industry, the airline industry, doesn't necessarily want to see this kind of evolution take place. So I think it will happen, but I actually think it'll happen offshore first.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're right.
Well, the highway in the sky exists. We just
Mhm.
need approval.
Scott.
I'm just wondering if BMW will go back to their roots.
Oh no, that's interesting. I'm sure they will at some
Of
point.
course,
Anyway,
they'll nickel and dime you to death.
so exactly.
Right.
It'll be a
That
recurring monthly
BMW.
fee for, I don't know, windshield wipers or
Dates.
something. Yeah, exactly. Scott,
Dates.
thank you for being our guest today. I confess I have not yet watched the documentary, but I cannot wait to get it and check it out, especially with Dave. Dave's a harsh critic, and if he says it's a really well-made film, then I really can't wait to see it. Where do I find it? Where do I get in contact with you if I have questions? How do we watch the film?
Sure. So first off, thank you all. There's 5 of you, very nice hosts that welcome me onto this show. So thank you very much for having me and supporting independent film. It's so important. So thank you very much. The best way to follow me personally is through my Instagram. That's at Scott_P_Hardie. You can find the film. The film has premiered and is live on Amazon Prime Video.
Oh.
So check it out. It's there to buy or rent.
And the title of the film. The title of the film again.
The title of the film is Father of the Flying Car. There's more information on flyingcarmovie.com. We also have an NFT collection, which is now live on OpenSea, which has kind of a first of its kind cinematic posters, which include bits of the film. So exciting stuff.
Very exciting stuff. And that's Scott_P_Hardie, spelled with an IE, not HARDY, but HARDIE. And I really appreciate it, Scott. I hope you'll hang out for the rest of the show and answer this trivia question with us at the very end. And otherwise keep me and Ben in check. So I have 3 things. We're going to segue right into an in the news segment. I have actually a handful of things that I wanted to share, just have been hanging out on my desk for a while now, that I just really quickly wanted to talk about. Little snippets of things that I found here and there on the internet. Of course, the first thing is kind of a question for all of us. What gear are you supposed to leave your car parked in case the parking brake fails? Assuming, of course, a manual transmission. But what gear are you supposed to leave the car in case the parking brake fails? And the one person says, I personally don't think it matters, but a friend is telling them they need to always leave it parked in reverse gear. What do you guys think?
I think it depends on which way your car is pointing and
Yes.
what is it a level surface?
Yes.
Now, I live in the Netherlands, so every surface is virtually a level surface. I mean, I literally had to go 2 kilometers outside of town to find a hill when I was doing my driving lessons, so I could prove to my driving instructor I knew how to hold a car on a hill with a clutch.
Yeah.
But I always leave mine in first.
I think the answer, we could, and only in the interest of time, we could debate this for a while, but the answer is, I think, go with the lowest gear or the largest gear possible. And in most cars, that's the reverse gear.
Yep.
It's got the largest numbers associated with it. But the other key thing to remember is, you're right. Misty nailed it right. The Civic Mark 8 owner's manual says, leave it in first gear when facing uphill, leave it in reverse gear when you're facing downhill. But the thing that no one mentions is, point your tires toward the curb.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Point your tires toward the curb. But also, I don't know that some of the newer cars let you put it in any specific gear. I think I have turned the engine off when I was in park, when I was in drive or reverse, and it automatically goes to park.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's an automatic transmission, which are abominations unto the Lord.
Okay, so we're talking completely manual. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just completely
Okay.
manual. That's right.
We're talking real cars here, not point and drive. Love you, Don.
God. Sorry. Okay.
Why don't you keep going, Mickey?
I'm going to keep going. If I can stop laughing, I'll talk. The second news item I found was this guy who just posted a picture of his odometer, and it says 608,000 miles, 60861, right? And the news item here is this fellow worked at a Kia dealership that used to offer a 10-year unlimited mile warranty. So a 2012 Kia Sorento finally had its warranty expire after, and that's 10 years, right? 2012 to 2022. This warranty finally expired after 203 oil changes, 20 transmission flushes, 9 engines, and 4 transmissions. The warranty finally expired and the owner finally traded it in.
Nice.
I'm
So
like,
I was talking to a friend the other night who said that they do change out their engines under warranty over and over and over again. I was kind of surprised.
I'm very surprised.
What are you doing to that poor thing?
Yeah.
9 engines in 10 years. I don't know. Is that a Kia thing or is that
How?
a driver thing?
That's a driver thing.
It's got
No.
It has to be a driver thing.
That's not a driver. That is an automotive catastrophe.
That's an automotive abuser.
Yeah. I mean, that is someone who has zero regard for all of the man hours that went into designing that beautiful thing that we call an internal combustion engine. And they should be literally forced to ride nothing but push bikes for the rest of their lives.
Yes, Misty's need.
My question is, if this guy's employed, how does he have enough time to drive that much?
That's a very
Unless
good
he's
question.
Well,
like
it's a traveling salesperson. I mean,
60,000 miles a year, Ben. That's
Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah.
he could be a courier.
I'm a road warrior, and I don't drive that much a year.
Yeah, but I mean, I know Chris drives like crazy with his sales route. He drives like crazy.
Yeah.
And actually, this is an interesting discussion because we are looking at the Kia or the Hyundai because of its warranty right now, and it supposedly they stand by it, and they will.
Mazda.
I've heard that over and over again. But the Kia and the Hyundais have really showed up with good vehicles now, and they're backing it up with the warranty.
Mazda.
But yeah, Mazda. Ben's going to say the same thing. All right, next item on my in the news desk is this picture that you guys cannot see, but a young woman found an Apple AirTag duct taped to the underside of her car. So if you don't know what an Apple AirTag is, it's one of those remote location devices. You put it on your items so that you can find them if they get lost or if they get stolen or whatever. So the long story short here, just to take a little bit of the creep factor out of it, is that apparently her crazy stepfather was trying to keep track of her, and he taped the thing under her car. But you could easily be something a little more nefarious than that, right? A stalker or something. And the question then is,
I think that's pretty nefarious anyway.
I think so. I agree.
And
But
abusive.
it's happening. Women, anybody are finding them in their purses.
Oh,
After going to a bar. It's actually something that we, I teach a class on cyber, digital citizenship.
yeah.
And it's a segment that I'm developing because this is actually becoming pretty predominant, that people are finding these tags in their purses, in their jean pockets. Yeah. Scott,
have you heard anything about this? Nothing?
No, this is
I was
terrifying.
I was completely shocked by this, so the question then becomes, how do you become aware that this kind of thing is hidden on your person or on your vehicle or whatever? And there are apps. You can obviously use your own iPhone. It'll tell you if there are AirTags in your proximity. But if you have an Android, there are apps you can download that will help your Android do the same thing. So it'll tell you if there's an AirTag in your, it won't tell you where it is, but at least it'll say, yep, you have one nearby, go find it. So
yeah, there's another problem though. If you hand someone your phone and say, hey, put your contact information in it, they can turn on Find My Friend.
Yes.
And they can basically, even with your phone, be tracking you because if you're at a bar and you're like, hey, I just met you, put your information in my phone.
Yep.
Not such a good idea.
Yep.
I am so glad I am middle-aged. I am so glad that I'm not dealing with this. I made a vow to myself that if I am ever single again for whatever reason, I'm kicking them out of bed at dawn unless they cook breakfast, and then they can stay as long as they do the dishes. I'm just like, I'm not doing this anymore. I mean, I'm literally not doing this anymore. I did this all through my 20s, and I'm just so glad that I grew up, well, my 20s was, the 90s, so I didn't have to worry about this. I just had to worry about people putting stuff in my drink, which is bad enough, but this is absolutely, this is the downside of technology. This is the dark side.
That's right.
Of technology. So, and now I'm just like, the only reason I'm not going to hit you with my car is because it'll scratch my car. and Scott, I don't know if you've listened to previous episodes. There's a very deep love affair between me and my Mazda MX-5 or my Mazda Miata, and her name is Claudette. And we did have as guests two of the founding designers, and I fangirled like really hard.
That's an understatement. That was an understatement. We had to edit out major parts of the episode because they're just borderline on obscene.
I have to say, the only person that I fangirled that hard on was the time I ran into Kara Cooney in the Leiden Antiquities Museum. But she's hot. I mean, she's like 6 foot Amazon woman, hot archaeologist, Egyptologist, and I was like, oh my God, it's Kara Cooney. And then I had to go lay down.
So I'm sharing a picture here that the audience cannot see, but it's basically a person handling or showing in the picture an Oscar Mayer Wiener bus and a toy. Rather, and what that is specifically is an Oscar Mayer Wiener whistle. And the description is, you can blow into it from either end.
Okay.
And I'm like,
where do we go with this?
Exactly. That was my thought. I'm like, if you're the Oscar Mayer company and you have a bus that's internationally known, and you want to put out a toy, a memento for it, why a whistle? I'm a little,
because the vibrator was too obvious.
Thank you.
That's exactly.
Everything else.
When I first joined this show 2 years ago, it was right after the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile stalked me through Atlanta. So it was like for like a week and a half, every day, everywhere I went in the city, somehow the Wienermobile showed up. And like in the beginning, I'm like, oh, isn't that neat? And by the end of the week, I'm like, there's a little wiener shaped eye tracker on my car now.
That is some targeted marketing.
At least it wasn't the Peanut Mobile.
Mr. Peanut creeps me out.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I have seen.
He's a legume.
He has ruined monocle wearing for the rest of us.
They have a similar vehicle. Imagine a peanut on the chassis instead of a hot dog. I've seen it in the Atlanta area.
That takes me back to the old Mary Tyler Moore show when Chuckles the Clown bites the dust. He was dressed as a giant peanut, and an rogue elephant tried to shell him.
Nice. All right, that is it. Thank you, you guys. This has been an excellent episode. Let's wrap by answering our
trivia question.
Our trivia question.
Don't forget our trivia question.
Misty,
We got like 5 seconds because today was Formula One and it was in France at Paul Ricard, and there was Bollard carnage.
Oh,
so many Bollard.
We need to do that Phil the Bollard T-shirt. We need to do that.
Yes, we do.
Poor
Scott,
Phil.
Scott, for that at a previous race, a Bollard got creamed and we adopted it and named him Phil. So Phil the Bollard is the Thing About Cars mascot.
Well, there was just Bollard carnage. F2 Porsche Super Cup, which is apparently filled with Dutchmen left and right, and do not listen to British coverage with all the Dutch names. I have a headache now. And then during during F1, so yeah, Poor Phil. He had a hard Sunday.
Poor
Let's all take a
Phil.
moment. Yeah,
Okay.
poor Phil.
All right. So what I'm going to do while we're taking a moment, or at least after the show, is I'm going to set up some sort of there's a print-on-demand T-shirt service thing that I've set up shop in for some of my other purposes. We'll set up a Phil the Bollard T-shirt on there, and we'll put the link on it for it somewhere so that people can buy a Phil the Bollard T-shirt if they want to. But
I have to have one to replace my Flogging Molly t-shirt. I'm going to Flogging Molly on August the 3rd because I have the best son ever. He bought his mom tickets for Flogging Molly.
all right.
If you don't know, if you don't know what Flogging Molly is, it's accordions and mosh pits.
Yes. Yes. Accordions and mosh pits. Are you going to do the Doc Martin thing? What are you going to do?
No, actually, I'm probably gonna put on my. I don't know if I want to do my platform Mary Janes or my clear silicone shit kickers
Ooh,
with my bisexual flag tights.
Next time on the thing about footwear.
All right. Our trivia question is what was the last vehicle offered with a column-mounted 3-speed manual transmission, otherwise known as 3 on the tree? This is the first time Ben's heard this question. He hasn't heard it at the top of the episode. So what's the last vehicle to get that 3 on the tree? Our guest of honor, Scott, you want to make the first guess?
I'm going to go with the Ford van.
The Ford Econoline van?
Yep, that's the
Okay.
one.
So Ben, our choices here, as I neglect to read them to you, our choices are a Ford Econoline van, a Dodge diesel Ram pickup, a Chevy pickup, or a GMC van. Those are our choices. So Scott has said a Ford Econoline van. Dave, you want to make a choice here?
I believe this is actually a misnomer, and you've given 2 answers that are equally correct. I think the Chevy and GMC vans and pickups had it.
You think they're both involved?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so I'm I'm opting for 2 of the above, Mickey.
Okay, Dave's got 2 of the above, the Chevy and GMC products.
Yep.
Dawn, what do you think?
I actually was going to say the same thing. I was like, Chevy, GMC. I think Chris still is driving one. I know.
Right.
Exactly. I'm not kidding you. I think it is out there sitting in our driveway, resting away.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm going with both, but Chevy definitely.
Okay, Misty.
I was struggling, because I remember my mom having a Dodge Rambler with 3 on the tree, and the car, it was all a big mess. Yeah, I might have to go with Chevy too.
Okay, and Ben.
Well, it's probably incorrect, but I'm going to go with the Dodge just simply because one of the cars I learned to drive a manual gearbox with was, in fact, a 1970 Plymouth, a fellow Chrysler product that had a 3 on the tree. And that was a memorable experience. And we don't have time to go into all the adventures I had with it. But I will point out it was also the first car I ever drove over 100 miles an hour.
Whoa.
And I did it on bald tires in the rain.
You are crazy.
Oh.
Madman.
Thank you.
There was probably a girl involved, wasn't there?
No, that's the sad part.
Oh, man.
I was a very sad youth.
All right. So the answer is C, a Chevy pickup. The 1987 Chevrolet R10 and its twin, the GMC R15 pickup trucks, offered American consumers one final chance to purchase a new vehicle with a 3-speed column-mounted shifter. The gearbox is limited to models equipped with a 160 horsepower, 4.3-liter V6 engine and rear-wheel drive. A 3-on-the-floor option was available as well. While the 1987 Chevy R10 and GMC R15 pickups wave goodbye to the 3-on-the-tree, the 2 trucks are not the only 1987 model year vehicles available with a 3-speed manual gearbox. Both the 1987 Chevrolet and GMC G-Series vans offered a 3-speed manual transmission, albeit with a floor-mounted shift lever. The gearbox mates to either, well, we don't need to know about the engine, but so the
Wow.
answer is specifically the Chevy pickup and apparently not the GMC van. So that's our trivia question for the day.
I'm going to stick to flying cars.
Flying
There you go.
cars. That's right. That's absolutely right.
But will
Yeah.
your flying car have a 3 on the tree?
For you, anything.
The sweetest thing
If
anybody
you
said
want one,
to me.
go for it. I'm curious. What
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What was the question?
You're curious about what?
Oh, I was curious about what color y'all would pick for your flying car.
Oh, orange.
You can only fly that in the Netherlands, Don.
Okay.
I'd probably go. I've always been very partial to like the 1950s aqua with white accents.
Nice.
It'd be interesting in the sky too. It'd be nice.
Yeah. I'm thinking I would just go with straight white with maybe bright green livery on it.
Actually, I changed my vote. I'm going for purple glitter. I'm going 70s. I'm going 70s.
Purple flake paint. Purple.
What I'm doing.
All right, Scott. One more time. The documentary is called
Father of the Flying Car and is now available on Prime Video.
And the website is
flyingcarmovie.com.
flyingcarmovie.com. Thanks again, Scott. I hope our paths cross again in the future. Thanks for being our guest today.
Thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.